For centuries, the Amazon was believed to be empty, an untouched wilderness shaped only by nature, a place too dense, too wild, for complex human societies to exist. That assumption became part of history itself. But in recent decades, that image began to crack. As forests were cleared and the land was carefully surveyed, unexpected shapes started to emerge beneath the trees. Long straight lines, perfect curves, geometric forms stretching across the landscape. These were not random marks left by nature. They followed patterns, they repeated. And they appeared in places where no one thought complex societies had ever existed. What was once seen as empty wilderness was beginning to reveal a different story. These shapes have a name. They are called geoglyphs. Massive earthworks carved into the ground. Circles, squares, and straight lines, some stretching hundreds of meters across. They were not made by erosion or natural forces. They were designed, planned, and built by human hands. So who built these structures? That question has lingered ever since the geoglyphs were first documented. They were not created by a lost supercivilization, nor by small, scattered groups acting without coordination. The scale of these earthworks rules that out. Each shape required planning, each line required measurement, and each site required people working together over long periods of time. What emerges is not a mystery culture, but organized societies capable of reshaping their environment. Communities large enough to plan collectively, and stable enough to sustain these efforts across generations. Whoever built the Amazonian geoglyphs, they understood space, labor, and purpose far better than we once believed. The scale of these geoglyphs changes the question entirely. They are not isolated constructions, they appear across vast regions of the Amazon. Building them required more than effort. It required time, coordination, and people in significant numbers. Archaeologists estimate that thousands, possibly tens of thousands, may have lived in these regions at their peak. This was not a sparsely populated wilderness. It was a landscape shaped and maintained by human societies. So how did these societies live within such a dense environment? They didn't simply exist in the rainforest. They shaped it. People gathered in organized communities, working together to prepare soil, build structures, and maintain pathways across the landscape. Evidence shows long-term planning, soil enriched over generations, crops cultivated without stripping the forest away, and settlements designed to work with their surroundings, not against them. This was daily life, not survival at the edge of collapse, but a stable way of living, supported by shared knowledge and collective effort. The Amazon they inhabited was not untouched wilderness. It was a human landscape. So why did these societies disappear? Not through sudden collapse, and not through dramatic destruction. When Europeans arrived in the Amazon, they brought diseases to which local populations had no immunity. Entire communities declined within a few generations. As populations fell, settlements were abandoned. Fields were no longer maintained, paths faded, and slowly, the forest returned. What followed was not an empty land, but a landscape that forgot it had once been shaped by people. What these discoveries force us to do is rethink the Amazon entirely. This was not an untouched wilderness, nor a landscape passively shaped by nature alone. It was a region actively managed by human societies over centuries and across vast areas. The forest we see today is not just natural growth. It is the result of interaction, adaptation, and long-term human presence. To understand the Amazon, we must stop asking why people were here and start asking why we forgot they ever were. The story of the Amazon forces a larger question. If complex societies could exist here, hidden in plain sight, then how many others have we misunderstood? For generations, civilization was defined by cities, monuments, and visible ruins, but the Amazon shows a different model. One built on adaptation, management, and long-term balance with the environment. What changes is not just our view of the rainforest, but our definition of civilization itself. The Amazon does not change history. It reveals what was left out of it. These societies were not lost in time, but hidden beneath our assumptions. Civilization does not follow a single path, and the past we inherit is rarely complete.